everyone to our Social Security planning webinar, and specifically the headline today is what baby boomers need to know to maximize retirement income. Now, I'm going to start off by saying we're covering a lot of information. In fact, there are so many slides to get through that I'm not going to be able to stop and give each one probably the time it deserves, because we'd be here for 2 or 3 hours. But I think that speaks to how important this process is, because it's important and there's so many details to get right, and it's important to get it right. But B, that speaks to how we need to have an individual conversation about it. So this is absolutely something we should be talking about. We're very happy to provide this presentation and all the details in it to you, so you can, study it on your own. But even more than that, if you're having questions about something I'm coming up with, or I'm going to speak to in a few minutes here, please get in touch with us. Right here is it's my name, but this is our office address for Stein Financial Group, as well as our main office phone number. And the Stein at SteinFG is kind of our general email, but please feel free to also go to our website and look up all our contact info there, because this is a really important topic, like I say, and I absolutely want you to know how this affects you individually. So with that said, off the top, let's get started. And last but not least, I should introduce myself as Anthony Gerbi. You see my name on the screen there, but I'm a financial advisor with Stein Financial Group, and I'm going to be kind of taking you through all of this info. Couple disclaimers here. I won't linger too long. Feel free to pause and read if you'd like. But basically, we're going to aim at answering a few different questions today. And number one, and maybe the most asked question, will Social Security be there for me? As in, will it still be around in 20 years or 10 years or whatever? And we've heard a lot of stuff like Social Security is going to go bankrupt at this year or that year. And we'll talk a little bit about the nuances there. How much can you expect to receive? Big question. There are a few if-thens related to that. When should you apply? That actually ties into question number 2. How can you maximize the benefits? And that ties into 2 and 3. So you can see these are all kind of interconnected. And will Social Security be enough to live on in retirement? And for most of these questions, I'm not going to have a definitive answer for you. I'm going to kind of give you, well, this is what it looks like, and here's some things to consider. But I'm going to do my best to speak in a general sense about what we know today. And again, I can only answer generally because I'm answering for everyone. For you, there may be specific answers to these questions, and that's where we need to talk individually. So let's understand the value first. And I think that sounds like an obvious thing, right? But it's important. If your monthly benefit is $2,000 today, and you live, and if you live 10 more years, 20 more years, or 30 more years, you will receive this amount, $304,000, $673,000, or $1.1 million in lifetime benefits. Now, this assumes, you can see at the bottom, a 2.8% annual bump up. You'll hear the term COLA thrown around, C-O-L-A, not talking about the soda, talking about cost of living adjustment. And those are things I'll get into a little bit more detail, but that's what can raise your benefit from year to year. It doesn't have to be every year, but it's supposed to help keep pace with inflation mostly. Things get more expensive over time. Your Social Security benefit is supposed to be tied to that and grow to kind of keep the same purchasing power. Does it in reality? Sometimes, sometimes not. We'll talk about it. But basically, this is how much income you can expect if your benefit started today at $2,000 a month. So big numbers makes a big difference, right? That's what we're getting at here. Now, Social Security offers those annual inflation adjustments, and that's where I talked about that COLA just a second ago. So if your monthly benefit is $2,000 a month today, and the cost of living adjustments are just 2.8% per year, then in 10 years, that 2,000 grows to 2.636 or 2,600, I should say, and in 20 years it grows to 3,400, and in 30 years it grows to 4,500. So that's how your benefit gets bigger as time goes on, regardless of when you decide to take it, because that also makes a difference at where you start. But these are things that are voted on by Congress. So it's not a sure thing that a cost of living adjustment happens every year. They have to vote on it. And recently, anyway, kind of the trend has been they go a few years with no adjustments, where not adjusted upward at all, and then they make a bigger one in the third year to kind of catch back up. So whether that continues to be the case or not, that would involve me predicting what Congress is going to do, and I may be good, but I don't know if I'm that good. So let's, that's how the process works. Here is a big misconception, or I run into this a lot. So surviving benefits. So let's say there's a husband and wife, and the husband passes away, and the husband's Social Security benefit happened to be larger than his wife. So 2,000 for him and 1,200 for his wife. Well, you actually get to keep, and this, no male or female to it, it's just whoever survives gets to keep the higher of the two benefits that you were collecting. So if you pass away and you had the higher benefit, your spouse gets to keep your benefit, but you don't add them together, right? And that's, I think, where the question comes in. Is some people I've heard, or they've asked this question, so I just get to add that in. I keep their benefit and my own. No, you keep the higher of the two. So if yours was higher and your spouse passes away, your benefit's not going to change at all because you keep the higher of the two, which was the one you were already collecting. But it's an incredibly important thing for if the higher earner predeceases the lower earner and therefore the lower benefit receiver, you get to step up your benefit to what the higher earner was receiving. So let's get to our first question that I previewed. Will Social Security be there for me? And it's funny that this is the first question because it's probably the most complicated one. And no answer definitively can be given. I mean, the question is, it depends. So here's the deal. The trust fund that benefits are paid out from is still growing. And in fact, in 2020, it was $2.897 billion in billions. So there's still a ton of money left over there, and I'm looking at the numbers as I'm talking here. But 2020 results. So where were we? We were at one, and these numbers are in billions. So 1,000 billion is a trillion. I actually made a video not too long ago talking about how often we say $1 trillion these days. But the total income in 2020 was $1.062 trillion. So 1,000 billions, because that's how they reported, just to keep the numbers a little digestible. The total expenditures were $1.059 trillion. So there's actually a net increase in assets. And you can see the difference between 2019 and 2020 was 2.89 trillion and 2.895 trillion, or there was that $2 billion difference, basically. So the trust fund is actually growing, and that's good. You may have heard forecasts that without reform, benefits fall to 79% in 2035. This is a direct slide from the Social Security Administration. I'm not going to go into all the details here. Feel free to pause and read it yourself. But basically, the idea is that we have a generation of people getting older and older, right? Baby boomers. And they're a disproportionately large generation compared to generations that followed for a lot of reasons. But obviously, post-war baby boom, that's kind of why, right? So we're having to pay out more and more benefits for Social Security with fewer people adding in their working years. And that can lead to a projected deficit. And you can see benefits fall to 79% in 2035. Does that mean that when we hit 2035, you're going to get 79% as much as you do today? No, because things are going to change between now and 2035. We don't know exactly what's going to change, but I have a hard time believing, this is now a personal opinion here, that we're just going to let things go in a straight line, right? We're going to try to get a fix somewhere. And there are actually a couple easy things we could do. Easy maybe is a relative term here. But what could we do to help stall that 2035, which is probably more likely when we're talking about Congress? Just kick the can down the road, right? Or potentially fix the problem. Well, one thing we could do is increase the maximum earnings subject to payroll taxes, Social Security payroll tax. Right now, that's $142,800. So we could bring that up to 200,000, and then you're taxed on 200,000 of your earnings, Social Security wise, and that would increase the money in, right? If you're thinking about how to build up a trust fund, you can increase the money going in, or you can decrease the money going out. Those are our two options. So we could also raise the normal retirement age, or the quote unquote full retirement age. You'll hear that term thrown around. We could make it so that you don't get your full benefit until a later year. And by the way, again, this is just my personal take on it. If I'm a politician, I'm much more likely to be in favor of raising an age on someone who is much, much younger. So if you've asked me this question, I've often said, probably the easiest way for politicians to do this is to do it for people who aren't even working yet, or in their eyes can't even vote yet, right? So I don't see this as a danger for those who are at retirement or near retirement, certainly who are collecting benefits already. I mean, more than likely, where we're going to target this is with younger people who either can't vote yet or just aren't in the prime earning years. It's very unlikely, in my opinion, that we're going to see a disruption for currently receiving benefits, people who are currently receiving benefits. We could lower benefits for future retirees, right? We could actually just cut the actual payment amount, not just raise the age. And we could also reduce the cost of living adjustment. So those are 4 levers we could pull. But again, I think a lot of the changes that we might see may be focused on people who are much younger now, maybe people who haven't even been born yet, to sort of balance the budget for the future, right? So the bottom line, for baby boomers, if you fall into that generation, your benefits are not likely to be affected. I can't say we know for sure because, of course, Congress is the one who determines that, but that's kind of where we fall on that first question. So question number 2, how much can you expect to receive for your benefits? All right, how much is coming in, right? How much is in my pocket? So it depends on how much you earned over your working career, because that's where the payroll taxes were taken out of, and the age at which you apply for your benefits. So the longer you wait, the bigger the payment will be. Now, how are they calculated? Let's just go through this really quick to kind of set the baseline. At age 62, which right now is the earliest you can take your Social Security benefits, you can apply for them. Your each year's earnings going back 35 years are tallied up and indexed for inflation. And actually, I should restate what I just said. What we use to calculate, and we, I guess, in the sense is the country, this is what the Social Security Administration uses to calculate this, is your highest 35 years of earnings. You may have more than 35 years of earnings. Great. They're only going to take the highest 35. Okay. And they are going to average all those out, and they're going to index them for inflation. And then they use their formula to determine what the amount should be. Don't worry about the AIME. That's just how they calculate it, and that's just how they do it. We just need to know what the number is to figure out how it affects us, right? You may see the term PIA, or primary insurance amount. That's just the check that you get at your full retirement age. So when you see PIA, just think that is the check that I get every year, and you can break it into monthly as well. And then, as I've mentioned before, the benefit is increased each year by cost of living adjustment. So let's get into a real world example. We've got a baby boomer born in 1950. They've had maximum Social Security earnings every year since age 22. So they've been really successful. What does that mean? They've gotten, their income has been above that threshold for the maximum taxes that can be taxed. It was 142,800 this year, and it's been lower previously because that marches up every year too. But they've been above that. So they've maxed out their Social Security taxes every year since age 22. The AIME calculates out to 8,238. Is that important? No, you don't need to know that number. Let Social Security know that number for you. The formula, and I'm not going to go through the math here, but this is how they calculate it. And basically, based on all of those numbers combining, their PIA, the check monthly that they're going to receive at their full retirement age, comes out to $2,466.60. That is amount that they will receive monthly when they retire. That's what you need to know. They calculate all this stuff. The Social Security Administration does this automatically. That's what they're there to do. So it's more about just seeing what the number is going to be rather than worrying about the formula. The formula is what it is. We're not changing it. They're using numbers from the past, so it's not like, I get the question a lot, if I work an extra year, will that have a big difference on my Social Security? And the answer is it depends. If you had a really low year or a few that are being of earnings that are being factored into your 35 highest years, like let's say you've only worked for 35 years and those first few years were kind of part-time jobs and it was you were making whatever you're making but much less than you're making now, then yeah, another year of a higher salary is going to make a difference. But what that difference is going to be, that sort of depends on your overall work history. So that's where we really need to get the Social Security office involved and get their projections. Full retirement age. This is a little bit, in my opinion, needlessly confusing, but this is just what we've decided to do. A while back, it used to be 66 for everybody, full retirement age. I shouldn't say everybody, but that was the general. You can see anyone who was born from 43 to 54, full retirement age is age 66. We decided we wanted to raise that to 67, but we did it sort of in 2-month intervals for people born in the 1950s. So use this chart, see where you land, right? If you were born between 43 and 54, your full retirement age is 66. 55, 66 in 2 months, 56, 66 in 4 months, you get the picture. Anybody born after 1960, your full retirement age is just a flat 67. And that's what it's going to be going forward until it's potentially changed again. So just something to know. Again, full retirement age is the age at which you get your full benefit. And full is kind of just a matter of opinion, right? Because what does that mean? It's just the number that the formula entitles you to. You can apply earlier, and this is what this slide's going to get at, and you can apply later. And here are the pros and cons to doing that. So first off, what if you apply early? You get a lessened percentage of your full benefits. So you can see it compares it there. If you apply at age 62 and your full retirement age is 66, you're going to get 75% of the number you would have gotten at 66. And you're asking, well, why would I do that? If I'm getting less, why wouldn't I just wait? Well, the trade-off is you get the benefit earlier, right? And then the question becomes, well, is that a good trade-off? Again, depends on your situation. And so on and so forth. So if your full retirement age is 67, obviously you'll get your full 100% at age 67, and it steps down a little bit every year. So that if your full retirement age is 67 and you apply at 62, you're only getting 70 cents on the dollar of what you would have gotten if you waited 5 more years. So something to definitely think about, and we'll talk about the power of that. Now, what if you wait after your full retirement age? So you start, let's say your full retirement age is 66. That means if you wait till 70, you get 8% per year in credit for delaying. Every year you delay. And by the way, you don't have to lock in your year, once you turn 60 or something. You don't have to make a commitment and say, no, I'm waiting till 70. You have the option to apply at any time once you're after 62. So, you can plan on waiting until 70 and say, hey, I want that extra, 8% a year here. That sounds like a good deal. But if something comes up or life just changes and you're like, actually, okay, things change, I need to take it sooner, you can always do that. So you're never held to, I'm going to wait till 70. It's just sort of maybe a goal that you can have. And again, it depends on your situation. So here's where to get your benefits. And I'll tell you a story. I recently just got married myself, and my wife is in the process of changing her name. And that involves a call to the Social Security Administration, or I shouldn't say call, you mail stuff in, there's documents and all that stuff. But she was on the phone trying to get a hold of Social Security a few days ago, and it was a nightmare to wait on hold for the Social Security office. Now, maybe they were just having a busier day, but the reason why all of these resources are websites is I just think that's going to be your better way to go. They absolutely have in-person offices. They absolutely have a phone number, but if you can get the info you need online, that's probably the way to go because you're going to get it instantly versus having to wait for someone to pick up the phone or making an appointment at the office. So these are the resources I highly encourage you to go to. Basically, if you Google Social Security, you're going to come up with socialsecurity.gov, and that's going to have a lot of the information you need, including your personal Social Security statement. So, all right, spousal benefits. Now, this is where it can start to get really complicated, right? So the spousal benefit is 1/2 of the primary worker's PIA, the full benefit, the check you get, again, think that when you hear PIA, if started at full retirement age. And I'm going to have real world examples because that statement is a little bit confusing all on its own, right? So for example, let's say John was the one with the higher Social Security. John's primary insurance amount is $2,000 a month, and his wife, Jane's, is only $800. So if Jane applies at her full retirement age, her benefit will be $1,000, which is 50% of John's. All right. So the reason you would do that is obvious, right? If your individual if your individual benefit is less than what you would be entitled to as a spouse, you're better off filing as a spouse. And the way to know that is your spousal benefit is 1/2 of your spouse's full benefit. Okay. So if John's making $2,000, that means the spousal benefit's $1,000. And for Jane, since she was only entitled to $800, that's a better deal. You should go that way. All right. And that's the simplest way to look at it. But here are a couple rules to keep in mind. The primary worker, just think of the primary worker as the person who has the higher benefit. Okay. The primary worker must have filed for benefits for you to file for spousal benefits, but they can suspend to build delayed credits if over full retirement age. Okay. So that means if they're over their full retirement age, 66 or 67 or anywhere in between, they could possibly delay or suspend and then build up those credits from 66 to 70. Again, that's a complicated statement of itself. We need to really figure out for you specifically whether this will work or not. So I can only give a somewhat generic answer for that. Spouse must be at least 62 for reduced benefit or 66 for full benefit, or whatever your full benefit. So if you are a spouse and you're like, hey, my spouse is already taking Social Security, I'd like to sign up for half of theirs as my spousal benefit, you will actually get a reduced number if you are under your full retirement age. So, and I have an example laying that out in just a few slides here. And spousal benefits do not get that 8% delayed credit once you're after your full retirement age. So once you hit your full retirement age, if the spousal benefit's going to be better for you, you might as well take it. There's not a benefit for delaying on a spousal benefit. So divorced spouse benefits, and this is where a lot of misinformation goes out as well. You are entitled to spousal benefits even if you are divorced if your marriage lasted 10 years or more. The person currently receiving, which if you are the person who's divorced and you were married for 10 years or more, you can't currently be married and still get divorced spouse benefits, right? As soon as you remarry, that option goes out because now you're remarried, so you have a current spouse that you could take benefits on. So something to consider there. And it's also true if the ex-spouse is entitled to Social Security, retirement, or disability benefits and is at least age 62. So your ex-spouse would need to be at least age 62 for you to be eligible for divorced spouse benefits. So here are a few other complicated rules. I'm just going to read through these. Again, if this applies to you, let's have an individual conversation. Rules. More than one ex-spouse can receive benefits on the same worker's record. So if you have an ex and that ex has been remarried, you can still collect benefits on their record based on their earnings record. Benefits paid to one ex-spouse do not affect those paid to the worker, the current spouse, or other ex-spouses. So you're not going to change anything on their end if you are an ex-spouse and your ex has gotten remarried or remarried and then redivorced again, right? You're not going to change their numbers at all. This is totally just about you. The worker or your ex will not be notified that you have applied for benefits. So we get this a lot too. Will they know that I'm doing this? No, it's completely about you. They're not notified about it. It doesn't affect them at all. And divorced spouse benefits stop upon remarriage of spouse, meaning you, in the sense if you get remarried, the benefits stop. So something to consider there. Survivor benefits. Okay, another nuance on Social Security. Survivor benefits. So if your spouse passes away and they were receiving Social Security, depends on a few things. First off, it depends on the age at which the deceased spouse originally claimed his or her benefit, i.e. the original benefit. If they claimed before their full retirement age, survivor benefit will be limited to the higher of the deceased spouse's benefit, or 82.5% of his PIA. Okay, I'm talking fast. There's a lot of numbers going on. I'm going to get to an example of this in a second. So if I'm losing you, excuse me, stay with me. We'll get into a more concrete world here. If the spouse claimed after his full retirement age, or his or her, gender doesn't matter here, the survivor benefit will include delayed credits. The age at which the widow claims the survivor benefit, the actual benefit, if she claims before her full retirement age, it'll be reduced. If she claims after, it'll be equal to 100% or more. Okay, let's get to a real world example. Those were the rules. If you want to write those down, feel free to go back and pause, but here's how it actually works out. Okay, so Joe and Julie are married. Both are over their full retirement age. Joe's benefit is $2,000. Julie's benefit is $1,200. Joe passes away. Julie notifies Social Security, and her $1,200 benefit is replaced by her husband's $2,000 benefit. You take the higher of the two. That's where that comes in. So they're both over the full retirement age. No weird, caveats apply. You just step up to the higher of the two. Easy peasy. But if we get into this an example, Joe and Julie are married. Joe's amount is $2,000 a month. Joe files for Social Security at 62. Okay, he filed early, so he actually only gets 75% of what his full amount should have been, which means $1,500. So Joe is receiving $1,500. Joe dies. Julie's survivor benefit will be the higher of the two options here, either $1,500 or 82.5% of Joe's full amount of $2,000. In this case, that's actually higher, so her benefit will be $1,650. Now, another nuance, Julie can claim that benefit as early as age 60, so even before she turns 62. But if she does, her benefit, that $1,650, will also be reduced because she's applying early. And that means she'll actually end up with $1,180 a month in her pocket. Now, if she waits till her full retirement age or later, she'll get the full $1,650. So there's two times to be considerate of here. One is when the one spouse dies, and obviously that can't be changed, so that just is what it is, and when they took their Social Security originally. And then when the surviving spouse decides to turn on survivor benefits, that's also a factor. Now, don't worry about having to calculate all this by hand and getting, a graph paper notebook and charting all of this. The Social Security Administration helps and does all of this for you. But these are just the things to be aware of, and we can also help you kind of navigate this. So it does get complicated, but we can get through it if this applies. Here's another example. Joe and Julie are married. Joe's full retirement benefit is $2,000, and Joe waited until age 70 to take his. So actually, his full amount was $2,000, but since he waited, he got 8% a year, and his first check is at $2,640 once he turns 70. Joe passes away, and Julie's survivor benefit will be equal to Joe's benefit of $2,640. That's her survivor benefit. Now, if Julie claims that early, it still gets reduced, even though Joe waited. But if Julie waits to her full retirement age or later, although there's no incentive to wait till later, so you might as well take it right at the full retirement age if you haven't already, she gets that full $2,640. So Joe's patience, Joe's waiting to take, still benefits Julie. And again, all these nuances we work out as we kind of talk about what you should do individually. So rules for survivor benefits. Couple must have been married for at least 9 months at the date of death, except in the case of accident. That's where you got to talk to the Social Security Administration. They're the ones that have all the rules for this. Survivor must be at least 60 to get, that's the earliest you can turn it on. So it's actually earlier than you can turn on your personal benefit. And there may be cases, by the way, where if you have a deceased spouse, you turn on your survivor benefit from 60 to 62, and then you eventually take your personal benefit. Now, whether that makes sense for you is completely a case by case. So I bring it up, and now I'm going to walk away from it, but we can talk about that if that may apply to you. And it actually gets lower if it's a disability that was in play here, and that's a whole other world that we're just kind of scratching the surface on, the disability benefits. Survivor benefit is not available if the widow or widower, the survivor, remarries before age 60 or 50 for disabled survivor, unless that marriage ends. So again, we have if, thens, and unless, and it gets complicated, right? And we can see the last bullet point here. The divorced spouse survivor benefit available if the marriage lasted at least 10 years. So even if you have an ex and that ex dies, you may still be eligible for survivor benefits. So again, it gets complicated, right? When should I apply for benefits? Question number 3. Factors to consider. Your health status, probably the number one factor to consider, right? How long do you expect to live? And unfortunately, nobody knows the answer to that question. But that makes a big difference when it comes to, okay, should I start it earlier and just start taking the checks? Or should I wait and get the biggest amount possible, but then delay the time in the interim where I would have been receiving checks? Obviously, your need is a huge factor. Whether or not you plan to keep working after your retirement, maybe you pick up a part-time job, that may make a difference on your income needs. And also your survivor or your spouse, what their needs might be. Again, it could pay to wait in that case. So why delay benefits? You get a bigger check to start. This is the number one reason. Here it is laid out plain as day. If your full benefit was $24.66 at age 66, right? You get 100%. That's that second column there. You get 100% of the amount at 66. That's a $24.66. And yeah, that will be increased because of cost of living adjustments, right? But your benefit could be as big as $32.55 if you waited till 70, or as low as $18.50 if you started at 62. So keep that in mind, that the longer you wait, the bigger that check is, and that check only gets bigger for the rest of your life, unless rules and regulations change and Congress would have to vote on all that, and there'd be a lot of consternation about it, to be totally honest. But locking in a higher benefit can have a huge impact on your retirement plan. We see it every day. So there are many, many times where it pays to wait, even though it can be hard, right? Everybody's bad with delayed gratification. You've been working for so long, you want to take those benefits as soon as you're eligible. That can work for some people, but it might be better to wait. And that's where we really need to decide together about that. Why delay benefits? Okay, you get more income later on. Here is that same sort of chart if you claim at 62 versus 70, but let's go out to ages 75, 80, 85. Look at the difference in these benefits if you claim at 62 versus 70. I mean, if you live a long life, you're going to be much better off having waited to claim. Again, nobody knows how long of a life we get to live. And that's part of the problem with this question and why there is no easy answer. But we at least have to consider these options here. So when to apply for Social Security, key points to remember. If you apply early, your benefit starts lower and stays lower for life than it could have been, right? Cost of living adjustments, COLAs, magnify the impact of earlier delayed claiming, right? So if you're getting a certain percentage of an adjustment, a percentage of a bigger number is a bigger number, right? If you start bigger, those percentages are going to give you bigger raises every year in dollar values. The percentage is the same, but dollar value. So that makes a difference too to think about. And remember that your decision could impact your survivor benefits. In fact, not could, it will impact survivor benefits. So your delaying may give a surviving spouse more future income. The things to consider, again, we need to talk about this together to figure out your specific answer. How can I maximize my benefits? Okay, well, we talked about delaying. That's one way to increase them, but how do we maximize them? First off, go to socialsecurity.gov and look at your statement. All right, log in. There'll be a way for you to get your personal statement and check for its accuracy, right? Are you missing a year? Do all the numbers look about right? You don't have to dig through 30 years of taxes to make sure they have it down to the dollar necessarily, although you absolutely can if you want to. But is anything out of place? Does it look about right? And finally, where are you with when you want to retire? Maybe you're already retired. Great, decisions made. Let's move on and maximize from there. But if you're still working, there may be room to improve your Social Security benefits by working another year or two, and we can look at the effects of that. Strategy number 2, apply for Social Security at the optimal time And what is the optimal time? Well, it's different for everybody. Of course it is, right? No easy answers here. But consider your income needs, your life expectancy, and your spouse's life expectancy. And by the way, if you don't know your life expectancy, we can give you some tables based on your current age and all that, and they'll be averaged. So, and no person is average in themselves, but that can give you an average. And then of course, look at your family history. That will give you a sense, maybe not a perfectly accurate one, but a sense of kind of what we're looking at here. And it's an important conversation to have both with yourself and your spouse, but also with us as we kind of plan for this, because we want to be clear-eyed about all of this. All right, a lot of people ask about working after you take your Social Security benefits. How does that work? Can you even do it? What happens? If you apply for Social Security before full retirement age, before 66 or 67, and you are still working, $1 of benefits from Social Security will be withheld for every $2 you earn over $15,120 in 2013, and that number's gone up since then. But basically, you can earn between $15,000 and $20,000 from a job, from a part-time job or a full-time job, doesn't matter, while still taking Social Security, and it will not affect your benefits at all. But once you hit that threshold, benefits will be withheld. Right now, that doesn't mean they're penalizing you necessarily, right? They're not taking that away from your actual benefit amount. They're just withholding them because they're saying, okay, well, you hit our earnings test number. Now, your benefit will be adjusted at full retirement age, but don't let this test discourage you from working. It can be in your best interest to take Social Security and continue to work. And that's where we need to work on this together, right? And figure out what makes the most sense for you, but it can be. So don't just dismiss this because there are, caveats here. And finally, to avoid the earnings test, if you apply at your full retirement age or later, again, 66 or 67 for all of you, or somewhere in between for some of you, then you avoid that earnings test completely. So then it's not even an issue. So if you're 67 is your full retirement age and you're 68, you can still work and you don't have to worry about this earnings test, and you can take Social Security. So something to think about there. Ways to minimize taxes on Social Security benefits. All right, there's a few different options here. I'm going to read through them, but again, it's such a case-by-case basis. So here's what you could do. You could reduce other income with tax-advantaged investments, right? If you reduce taxes elsewhere, that's going to maybe put you into a lower bracket when it comes to Social Security, or just reduce your taxes in general. Anticipate your IRA, individual retirement account, required minimum distributions, which may put you in a higher tax bracket because those are tax-like income, and consider drawing down IRAs before age 72, which is RMD age. Now, whether that makes sense for you or not, complete case-by-case basis. So I've said that a lot, but it's true. We need to decide whether that makes sense because it may or may not. One of the options, if you wanted to say, hey, I'd like to start drawing down my IRA so those RMDs don't hit me quite as hard later, you can convert traditional IRA to Roth IRA. Traditional is pre-tax when the money goes in, taxed when it comes out. Roth is the opposite, taxed when it went in, not taxed when it comes out, and it's not subject to RMDs. That's all I'll say for now, but again, we have a lot of people who take advantage of that, and it's a powerful strategy. You could delay Social Security, reduces number of years, benefits are subject to tax, pretty self-explanatory. You could reduce your expenses, of course, obviously, that's one way to lower taxes. You just don't need as much money. And you continue to manage taxes throughout retirement. Some obvious things there, but important to remember that that's a piece of the puzzle here. So strategy number 3, coordinate your Social Security with your overall retirement income plan. This is where we come in, and literally we do this every day. And it's so important to get these things coordinated, to say, hey, you have an income need. Let's decide where it's coming from, and let's then maximize the benefits that you're getting from each piece of the puzzle and fit them all together well, so that you have a cohesive plan where we're not, losing efficiency from paying more in taxes than we would need to, for example, or we're setting ourselves up for high RMDs in the future, and maybe we could have avoided that and still come out ahead in this other way. All those things are huge pieces of the puzzle that we deal with every day. So please, if you are looking for help with this, obviously get in touch with us. But if you know someone who's looking for help with this, we are absolutely working with people every day on this, and we're more than happy to run an analysis and kind of talk through what the options are. So what Social Security personnel can and can't do. They can estimate your benefits, and they can tell you what you're entitled to right now. That is what they do. And if you ask them to go beyond that, they're going to tell you that they can't. And they can't project future benefits through scenario planning, and they can't help with strategies designed to maximize benefits. That, by the way, is what we can do. I'm not saying we can guarantee anything in the future, but we can help predict and project for the future. And I think that's a cornerstone of anyone's plan, projecting for the future and deciding, hey, how can I maximize my benefits here? So, all right. Question number 5, will Social Security be enough to live on in retirement? And here's one I have an answer for you right away. Probably not. It can be done. We all probably know someone who's basically been able to pull this off, and congrats to them. But in the modern world we live in, and again, from someone who sees this every day, most likely Social Security by itself is not going to be enough. We're going to need assets. We're going to need other streams of income, whether that's a pension or an annuity or what have you. So everyone's situation is different, but Social Security by itself is just one piece of the puzzle. So consider Social Security in the context of pensions, IRAs, 401ks, required minimum distributions, and that age 70 and a half actually is the old number. It actually changed to 72 lately. So that was a benefit. We got to wait a couple more years. But you can take IRA distributions before that. So that's why we need to consider it. Consider your investments, consider possibly working. And hopefully it's a situation where you work because you want to. But at the same time, that's a valid option here. You have questions, we can help. If you or someone you know is asking themselves these questions, or maybe for someone you know should be asking themselves these questions, right? When should I apply for Social Security? What if I want to keep working? What if I've already applied? How much will my benefit be? How can I coordinate spousal benefits? What's the best long-term strategy? What do I do next? Right? It's exhausting. If you have these questions, or you know somebody who does, we can help with this. We do it every day, and that's the number one point here. We can help. You're not on an island when it comes to this. So let us help protect your nest egg and maximize your income in retirement. That's my last slide. I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning for a minute, just to put my contact info up on the screen, our contact info at Stein Financial Group. We do this every day, legitimately, and we can help you with planning. So I appreciate your patience as I work through all of these slides. I know it was a ton of information. It's a ton of information for me, and I, again, look at it every day. So please get in touch with us with your questions. We will be having more events like this in the future, and check out our YouTube channel for all of our past events. We've got a lot of great information there. Just search Stein Financial Group YouTube and it'll all come up. So with that, I'm going to leave it there for the day, and thank you everybody for coming.